Hello and welcome to the Press Room, where today we're discussing analytics in big data. I'd like to begin with a definition, folks. And Ellie, what classifies information as big data?
Well, we could just go with the trite answer, which is it's just data that's really, really big. Most people define really big as bigger than would fit on a single computer, which drives right now are at 2 to 3 terabytes. So somewhere in that range is where you go from being little data to big data. But what people really need to understand is this whole movement of big data came out of the technology sector, where they basically invented a new way to store data. So big data is really a storage paradigm. It's the format that the data is stored in and not so much how much of the data there is. And there are sort of different things you can do when you have different ways of storing the data. Think of it as if your closet is organized by color, that's different than if it's organized by occasion, and the kinds of things you can do with that closet are different, depending on what kind of organization system you have.
When I was talking to some of my technical colleagues at Deloitte Consulting, we were trying to come up with, how do we define big data? And one is, data you can't fit into a computer. Another nice definition is the 3 V's. There's the variety, velocity, and volume of the data. Those are kind of hallmarks of big data. Because it's not just structured text anymore. It's structured data anymore. It's unstructured text, photographs, tweets, social media, and so on. And it's a process of getting value from data. It's a process of extracting information from data. And it's a process of extracting actionable knowledge from data. All right? So it's really not a data-driven process. It really should be a strategy-driven process.
To add to what Jim said, as 3 V's, I would say we could make up a 4th V.
Oh, I have plenty of 4th V's.
Yeah, lots of them. But the 4th V is value.
Yeah.
And what we are finding enormous, a real problem with getting companies, executives, people who are just talking about big data generally, to understand that, as you say, it's not just about technology, and it's not just about predictive modeling or statistical modeling of some form, but it's really around finding the value in the whole effort from a holistic perspective. Yeah. So it's around what's your strategy, what are you going to do with all of this big data or lots of data? How come you weren't necessarily doing great things and creating value with small data, which is what we kind of, the vernacular is what we call the old data that we used to have before we had the big data term. And then it seems that's what's happened is, as Jim was saying, the whole term has gotten away from everyone. And now there's this almost this fear of missing something.
I actually went to a marketing conference. I attended this in Boston a few months ago, and I felt like the fear about big data was palpable. People just didn't understand the concept, and I think part of that is because the word is being used in so many different disjoint ways. I think it is spreading a lot of fear and uncertainty, because what you really want to do is you want to figure out, well, what are my drivers? What are my strategic problems? And what information do I need to attack those strategic problems? You guys face this all the time at Wharton.
Yeah, one of the things we actually do as an exercise with students is we actually call it analytics ad lib. So we pull out,
Sounds like fun.
I have a set of cards that have different data sources that a company might have. So a retailer might have every view of every product that's been on their website. We pull out that, and then we pull out a business decision. Advertising, where should we advertise? Can we use that data source to help us drive advertising decisions? And we sketch up some, then we shuffle the cards again, pull up another data source and another business problem and say, does this business problem match this data set? One of the interesting things you find is sometimes it's easy. Product reviews are a great source of information for product development. But maybe not for channel planning or other business decisions. So, and it really takes practice to learn that art of saying, what is this data asset and how can we leverage it?
And actually, this is one of the joys and one of the great things about business analytics and data science these days is that there's all this room for creativity and mashups.
Absolutely.
And I think what you said is spot on. I think it really does start with, okay, well, what is our problem? What ways can we creatively bring data to bear to solve that problem? And very often the value comes from creating synthetic data elements and mashups.
I think there's an enormous inertia and energy in the business community around this concept of big data that I frankly feel very few executives really understand.
If you had to put a label on it right now, how are organizations doing with this concept?
Well, executives, senior executives, the ones who make the decisions, the ones who provide the budgets, the ones who pay us as management consultants and ultimately are your sponsors at the university. They expect value for this type of both investment in dollars, in time, which obviously translates to money as well. They're looking to further some benefit. And I believe that that's something that all businesses struggle with. I mean, I think every executive would say we're really good at certain things, but we often the company really struggle in other things, and very often it's execution of key initiatives. And sometimes companies will admit various symptoms. A lot of it is a lack of focus on value, and not aligning the organization to the realization of that value.
And another kind of addition to what you were just saying, John, is that there are a lot of cases where analytics projects are not quite cut and dried. It's not like you saw these last 4 movies, you'll enjoy this 5th movie. Sometimes it's very ambiguous. Sometimes you want to combine a lot of weak signals. You're looking for something kind of subtle, like fraud, which is an inherently hazy concept. Is somebody a better risk than another person? And what you get is valuable. It's better than just relying on gut instinct or intuition, and it's consistent, unlike the human brain. But at the same time, the person who's on the receiving end of that model, the person who's getting that score, that person might also have information not contained in the model. So how do you blend that background information and that prior knowledge that the caseworker has, or the underwriter or the HR manager, with the indications of the model? And that's another area of execution that I think needs more study.
And one of our big dilemmas as people who either do modeling or execute on models is dealing with people's either apprehension or fear factor of change, but it's also models aren't perfect.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
every single
Exactly.
time a model tells you to do something that ends up being wrong, there's somebody, usually in a position of power or influence, who's saying, they go, aha, I told you so.
Yep.
So,
Cherry picking.
your recommendation engine on your website told me that I would like product X, and that makes no sense. And the only reason it's telling me I like product X is because I bought something else for my mom for her birthday,
Right.
and it drew the incorrect conclusion that actually would interest me.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you've taken 1 step forward and 10 steps back.